We introduced swales, we introduced the conveyance system in there, and saw tremendous ability to stop the flows from hammering the real estate at the bottom. Now, with the intense rainfalls that we have, it's still there. We still see flooding situations, but the introduction of the system there is absolutely able to make a tremendous impact. But we only essentially address water quantity issues, the flooding issues. There's so much more that can be done in this site. And I bring it up because I want to point out with the parcel in the middle where you can see the dock coming off there. That is the lake community right-of-way. That's the beach access, essentially. And it sets itself up for a great site for a stormwater treatment project. Right there, we have the pipe system, we have the swale system that's coming down to discharge into the lake, right at the area of that dock. And I've always encouraged the residents there to look into some type of system that we might be able to put in place. And since it's a local community site, it brings up a great opportunity to put in a garden. Now, if this is the type of site that you guys have on your property, maybe you have a parking lot that you could utilize for stormwater treatment underneath under the lot before it discharges into your lake. And it's a great way to try to squeeze in that extra bit of treatment at the end of the pipe, because in the end, one, you can get some storage, help alleviate some of the flood damage. And two, you get the opportunity to do some water quality treatment that otherwise wouldn't be there. Overall, the lake is connected, much like yours, in the full system. There's a pond which feeds directly into Tyler Lake. Tyler Lake feeds directly into another. So it's always important to treat the systems upflow from whatever your target is. So it kind of wraps right back into the Eastern Hudson Watershed Corporation, where if we're treating things up in Kent, we know by the time it gets to the Kensico Reservoir in the Westchester area, that we've removed enough phosphorus to help the whole system all the way through. Start at the top of the hill and work your way back. In this area in particular, I wanted to pull back because we can see there are very well manicured lawns all around the entire lake. And everybody loves a well manicured lawn. It looks great. What it doesn't do is treat a single thing. One of the big things that a localized property owner, even if you don't have the ability to get your town, to get your lake community all on board for a large project, an individual property owner absolutely has the ability to do something in their footprint. And if you have enough footprints, all of a sudden you've got a great impact that can occur across the board. And in this case, I would absolutely say the introduction of a riparian buffer along the coastline, vegetation, kind of creating your own localized little wetland, does a great job of soaking up some of those nutrients, adds an additional floodplain, if you will, and can have a tremendous impact on the quality of the lakes. So there are different ways as well for the inflows at the lakes, which you can try to do things to increase treatment and reduce any type of flooding. And here what we see is kind of the direct introduction of the flows at the top of the screen. It's just a clear shot straight into the lake. By coming in and engineering a wetland system and a different flow path, if they have the ability, and I know this is a much larger project, but to have the ability to instead introduce a serpentine path through that inflow, what we're going to do is introduce the ability of all types of plant life to, one, create habitat, and two, soak up, again, more of the nutrients, become more of a healthy flood path, floodplain to eliminate any of the issues that may have been introduced uphill that we couldn't control to help have a healthier lake system for ourselves. So in addition to some of the ones that I hit on, the larger projects that we have seen that have been great success, that I think could be successful for folks around all the lake communities, but for the most part, maybe you need a larger footprint. That the corporation, we introduce a lot of stormwater ponds, wetlands, and in-ground filtration practices. They're fantastic. They work well. Especially in the case of ponds, while you drive around in Putnam County, particularly, I would point out Lake Carmel, where we have a series of ponds around the entire lake. Those ponds collect so much of the sediment and the contaminants that are introduced to the stormwater system that they themselves don't think they need help. But it's just because they are, in fact, working overtime and pulling more and more out. Ponds are great if you have the real estate. And I'd always encourage any community, if you have the ability to do wetlands and ponds, that they're fantastic. For flood control, again, if you have the ability and the real estate, open channel practices will always be successful because it allows the water to drain to the ground. You can introduce vegetation onto these sites as best you can to try to, again, soak up more nutrients. Within the program, what I've tried to do is get as far away from the introduction of riprap and rock as a function. It's great to slow the water down, absolutely. But without that vegetation, besides the fact that I think it's very ugly, without the vegetation, you're kind of missing a note, you're missing a step in the process. And so introducing bioswales to soak this up as best we can is a fantastic method. Bioswales on the side of the roads, if you have the space, is great. And while it does take a lot to maintain and care to make sure it's functioning correctly, I would always recommend introducing swales over a plate system as best you can. So as we're moving forward into the next decade or so, and even today, what I would say is, unfortunately, I think everybody's going to have to get pretty creative. Because there's one fact that I'm noticing within all the municipalities that is going to be a burden, unfortunately, for years to come. And so the new general permit for stormwater discharge and water quality was issued by New York State within the last year. And it introduces a significant hurdles and significant burdens for the municipalities to upgrade their systems and catch up with everything across the world. So resources are going to be incredibly limited within your local municipality to address these items. It is an unfortunate fact, and I know the towns are doing everything they can to find a solution to that, but a lot more has been put on their plates. So in many cases, resources are running very, very thin for the individual municipalities. And it may take a little bit more creativity on all of our parts to solve the issues. In many cases, I think that it can be handled a little bit better locally and within your own organizations. Perhaps teaming up with another lake to your north, to the south, work together to try to go after those grant systems. One thing for China Pond to go after a grant, that's a whole other thing for Kent's Lake Association, where everybody can pull their resources together and try to get a larger slice of the pie. That might be a goal. Again, it's always important to be open to the community that you're serving, be open to the ideas that might come across. Educate. It's, when that tax bill goes out, include that pamphlet that kind of gives a breakdown of what you're hoping people can put in place, what changes you hope you can have people make. As we are moving forward into the next 5 years of the program with East West Watershed Corporation, we just wrapped up pretty much the first 10 years, and we have another 5 years that are coming down the pipeline. That means another set of projects that we'll be looking to execute. For any of those folks that are within the watershed, I absolutely encourage you to reach out to me. or to your individual municipality that you're in, because while we've struggled over the last few years to be able to accept new projects, that has changed. And now, once funding is made available to us, and I expect that to be within the next 6 months, we're going to be able to start rolling out new projects, revisiting some old sites. I know I've had some conversations with many of you in the past. I encourage you to reach out to me and say, hey Kevin, by the way, remember this, and see if we can restart those projects. Outside of the watershed, the New York City DEC has a lot of resources for water quality improvement funds and grants that are available. Absolutely, even though the municipalities are burdened with the new permit that came out, absolutely hammer them, still talk to them, try to get guidance from them about what they might be reaching out to do, because the solutions are out there, but we might have to pick up a couple more rocks and waves. But with that, if there's any questions, I'm happy to dive in. Nope, okay, see you later.
Quick question about your district. Is it everything within the black line on the map there? Because I'm thinking Lake Peekskill, Lake Ascalona, Mohegan Lake, Roaring Brook, it might be outside of your jurisdiction.
Just a little bit, yeah. So it is in fact the black line. The furthest west we really get is pretty much Lexington Avenue in Portland. And then the Jefferson Valley outside of our area. So unfortunately, no. Well, I do know that if my memory is correct, I think some of you folks were in to speak with Bill Stoker with Fatco Industries. I could be wrong. I do know Lake Ascalona, I believe, may have. But for funding, I don't know specifically of any options that are available to you right now. But the New York City DEC website has upgraded. They've introduced a new way of interacting with it. I find it to be a really great tool to try to find those solutions and find those answers. At the moment, I unfortunately don't have a spot I could direct them to, but I would encourage you to visit this.
Just to follow up, the thing that you showed is the entranceway looked like a rock with a collection of pond.
Yeah.
Do you have a schematic of what is happening below that? I mean, is it just one pipe? Is it a series of chambers?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you reach out to me, my email was up on the page, but it's kevin@eohwc.org, and I'll be around for a little bit anyway, and I have some cards to provide. But yes, we have a few of those types of projects that are going into the ground, and we have schematics that you'll be able to see exactly what's going on.
Thank you. You did not bring up the issue of septics in terms of the discussion of contaminants as opposed to stormwater, and I know that's a touchy issue for many, but I would like to know what, if anything, you would suggest on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we end up having to draw a line between stormwater and then the wastewater, right? And around lake communities, stormwater is going to impact you this much if septics are going to impact you this much, right? You're lucky if the communities have systems that have been put in the last 20 years. If not, you might be talking about some folks that have a pit, not really a system. I know we struggle with that in Connecticut around our lake. And the DEP does have a program that's been in place, and I do believe has been refunded to up again, which is unfortunately also called the East of Hudson Watershed. East of Hudson Watershed program. I often get phone calls with people asking me to replace their septic system, but I unfortunately can't work with that. It is a piece of the new permit that's come in. I absolutely try to guide people toward septic replacement and in the very least cleaning as often as they can, because while a lot of the stormwater projects that we'll introduce can't solve that issue, one thing that might be able to help, going back to the riparian buffers, because that'll help soak up the runoff that, let's say it is a failing system, that maybe that wastewater is a little bit too close to the ground level that you would like. A riparian buffer is going to help try to soak up as much of that out of the ground as possible. And that's a great solution to kind of wrap both of them.
I can just say something that Sedgwick community actually has a septic program where we contract with one single provider and we clean each person's septic tank once every 3 years. You don't want to do it too often, but some people say 5, but 3 years was the sweet spot, and we just take that over as homeowners in our homeowner association. So that's something to consider.
I think that is a fantastic program, and I absolutely would encourage somebody to expand on that and work with us.
How many homes are in that community you're in now?
90.
Hi. So you mentioned roadside swales as being a great solution for stormwater management. Could you describe just what a swale is? And you said that maintaining a swale to have it operate properly is important. So could you describe what a well-maintained swale really is?
Sure. So a swale itself, we see them everywhere as we're driving through our communities, and essentially it is a parabolic ditch. It'll be on the roadside to try to capture and move stormwater runoff to whatever location. Often we will see it lined with rock. We'll often see it lined with vegetation. It often all depends. A well-maintained swale still has that parabolic shape. It still has an obvious curve to it, because as we fill in that swale with any, let's say, debris, rocks, leaves, plant, the ability for that swale to carry stormwater to another location almost vanishes. If you want to fill up a glass of water with ice, there's not a lot of space for the water. If you leave that glass empty and just let the water fill up, now you got the ability and capacity to move that water. So a well-manicured swale is going to be, if it's vegetated, it will be mowed. It will not have leaf debris in it, because that leaf debris is just, if heavy flow storms come through, like we've seen with these increased storm intensities, it'll wash out everything right down to the bottom of your lakes. It's doing a great job collecting it, but if we leave it there and then allow that next storm to come through and wash it all out, well, what did we accomplish? All we did was kind of accomplish a big pit of stuff at the bottom of the swale. So it is, in the case of the swale, what I've recommended for a lot of lake communities is maybe at the end of fall, beginning of spring, it's like a community event. You get out there, and maybe everybody goes out there with a rake, couple tarps, leaf blower, whatever the case is. You kind of clean that out, get back down to the bottom of the ground, and you try to pull all that decaying material out of the system before it reaches.
Hi, you mentioned grants that are available, but are they available to private associations?
Yes.
They are?
There would be some if individual associations, I think, might have trouble. But I think if you were to form back to the example I used earlier, the Kent Lakes Association is a private organization, I believe, but they've got a great shot at getting something, because you're affecting a much larger population. Whereas if it's the Sedgwick Club Association, or China Pond specifically, it's going to have a little bit more trouble qualifying for that state, because it just isn't enough of an impact for the project. So the resources are out there, but sometimes you got to just think a little bit more regional rather than local to qualify.
You mentioned an individual homeowner can actually do some things, but a lot of times when individual homeowners do things, they don't do the right thing. For example, can you terrace a hill? Can you put a beach at the end of your lake? Is gravel paths better than putting in concrete? Removing grass to have flower gardens. Some of these may be good things, some of them may be bad. What are some options that individuals can do for their own properties?
Sure. So at each property, we're going to have our downspouts coming off of our house. In those cases, it's great to get that water into the ground as best you can. Removing anything that stops infiltration is a great target and a great goal. Gravel path is fantastic. Now, the trouble with gravel path, of course, is if you place it in the wrong spot, after one big rainfall, you might not have a gravel path anymore. And so, you have to be strategic of where you use a technique like that, but it absolutely will allow for stormwater flow. In the case of gravel path, I'd say having a proper border around it, make sure that gravel doesn't travel anywhere, is fantastic and a great way to do it. The localized rain gardens to increase infiltration and pick up of the water, fantastic. Great way to do it again. Yeah. Oh, and there's a display here today with pictures of rain gardens and buffers that you guys should absolutely check out. My guess is that it's Putnam County. There you have it. We're now extension. So definitely check those out. And if you need something on a larger scale, take a look at it. Encourage you to look at East of Hudson website as well.
My question is about East of Hudson funding of maintenance of the various stormwater practices we've installed in Kent. Has there been any changes as far as funding, the equipment we need to clean out catch basins and things like that?
So unfortunately, the corporation can't specifically fund the equipment that's necessary. But in that circumstance, I've definitely had conversations with any local highway department to say, okay, if you feel you're falling short and you don't have this neighbor has it, so let's see if we can team up and get it done. Because absolutely, different highway departments have different resources at their disposal. In the case of Kent, we've been working pretty hard to catch everything up a little bit and make sure everything gets cleaned up the best we can. But it's about collaboration. And I think I am getting the hook. So I appreciate you guys spending time here listening to everything.
Again, I'm just going to emphasize Jennifer's suggestion that there's a real good complement to a lot of the issues that were brought up with the table in the back from Putnam and some wonderful volunteers and even the actual plants that you could plant in these plantings. So please go up and make use of that resource during our break. Our next speaker is going to speak about something that even from the very beginning of planning this conference, Jan and I were sure that we wanted to get on the program. I think I don't need to tell the people in this audience that as of January 1st, 2025, just 6 months ago, there was a major rehauling of the New York State wetland regulations by the legislature. And it has enormous implications, most of them extremely positive. It will add over 1 million acres to protected wetlands in New York State, and these will protect our lakes. At the same time, there are going to be more regulations, more complexity, and I think lots of us just want to know what's going on. We are very, very lucky to have Brian Drum with us today. Brian is, if you want to draw that outline, I would say 95% of the people in this room are going to be within Brian Drum's Region 3. is that right, of the DEC. And so that's exactly where we are. And so he's a resource for you. And really, we're so pleased to have him. He's a lifelong lake lover, grew up on Adirondack lakes, and he's a graduate of SUNY Syracuse College of Environmental Science, which is one of the predominant environmental science institutions in the state. And he's been at New York State DEC for over 20 years. So he has a lot of experience in this field. And as I mentioned, he's currently the manager for the ecosystem health in our own Region 3. A significant part of Brian's work involves building relationships. He works directly with town supervisors, highway superintendents, landowners, and often in very stressful situations, for example, following flood events, to find constructive solutions that protect both the property and the natural resources. His deep experience in balancing these regulatory responsibilities with community needs makes him a vital asset to our region and a wonderful speaker for today. Welcome to Brian.
Well, thank you very much. That was the nicest introduction I